Hi there, I am Posture Ellie, and today I'm doing a slightly different video to what I normally put up online, and that is that I'm doing a postural assessment sort of webinar thing really. So when I have one-to-one appointments with my clients, I will always get them to send me what we call the posture pictures, as well as a walking video and a couple of other things to me beforehand. But the posture pictures really are the best way in which I can sort of interact and bond with my client in explaining what I think is going on with their body. So people are often drawn to me because they suffer aches and pains, and the way that I help them is by improving their posture. We will get rid of or significantly reduce, hopefully, their aches and pains. But it's not so much improving posture perhaps in the way that people think in terms of like sitting up straight or being really rigid. It's about improving range of movement through the body. So I'm not looking at trying to make you stand up taller. I want to teach your muscles how to work better so that you naturally want to stand up taller, basically. I'm going to try and explain as best as I can my kind of thought process as I assess my clients. And I want to be clear that the pictures are sort of a small part of the story. So by looking at people's pictures, observing the positions of the joints through the body and how they kind of interact with each other, just standing still, stationary, you can get some really good ideas and clues as to what might be going on, but it doesn't tell you the full picture. So I'm all about trying to figure out what's a compensation and what is a dysfunction. And the compensation are the bits basically that work too hard and generally are the bits that end up hurting. And the dysfunction is really what I'm looking for, which is which part of the body can't move properly, which is forcing the other bits to have to overwork and compensate and therefore hurt. So the pictures can often show you what's compensating, but not necessarily what is dysfunctional. They are very, very helpful, however, and they just give me a kind of starting springboard with my clients as to where I want to start. And as I kind of mentioned, it's a really good way to start getting people thinking like I do and starting to think perhaps a little bit more objectively as to, okay, I can see why my knee might be hurting because look at all the weight that I'm bearing on it, or I can see that my shoulder would be hurting because look how stuck it looks, and that type of thing. So yeah, the pictures are just, they give us clues. I'm not going to rattle on for too long before I get going, but I just want to be really clear. This is not the only thing that I do. I don't just look at these pictures and then sort of base stuff off that. It's very much as to how my clients can move and observing the move and watching how they want to compensate and sort of just getting an idea of kind of what level they're at. So yeah, take this with a bit of a pinch of salt, but I just wanted to walk you through my thought process as we do this. And so I've asked people on Instagram to send me through their their posture pictures, and I had a couple of them that have come through that I'll discuss, but I wanted to first off start with myself. So firstly, kind of put myself out there on the line, explain that there's nobody who has absolutely perfect posture. You know, there's literally not a single person in the world, and especially not me. So I wanted to kind of hang myself out to dry publicly and walk you through what is wrong with my posture. And then I'm going to sort of walk through what I see in other people's posture as well. So the people that have sent through their pictures have given me permission to use them, although I've kept them anonymous and blocked out their head. I also don't know who these people are, so they're not my clients, and I don't have a clue what's going on with their bodies. So I've got no idea the amount of pain that they're in, or if they're in any pain at all. Some of them might not be. But I also do sometimes like to play a game to myself called Guess the Symptom. So I might say for a few people, I wonder if this person's got back pain or hip pain from observing what is going on with their posture and with their joints. So anyway, enough talking from me. And I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to have a look at me to start with, if it decides to load. Okay, brilliant. So here we have the glorious posture of Posture Ellie, which could be a lot better. So just before I actually walk through what it is I'm seeing in my posture, I just want to give you a couple of little hints as to what's going on in terms of how I've set these pictures up. So as best I can, and it kind of depends on the size of the file of the photo that the person sent. So I have to caveat that if the file doesn't fit the software properly, I can't quite put the picture in. But what I'm aiming for is to put the white line through the center of the feet. And actually in my pictures here, I haven't done a very good job because my front view picture, there should be, the line should be a little bit more centralized, but we're looking for that line to be in the center of the feet in the front to back pictures, and that will show you kind of how the body might deviate off that left to right balance further upstream. And secondly, in the side to side pictures, we put the line through the center of the malleolus, so that kind of ankle prominence there, and then we look at how the joints might deviate off in that sort of plane of movement forwards away from that ankle. So just wanted to give you that heads up, because it's not trying to line up the head or the belly or anything like that. We're trying to line up where the center of gravity may well be going, because that gives you some hints as to what is going on. So I've loaded my pictures up into the software and I've taken a screenshot, and my pictures, as pictures go, are pretty good posture pictures. And by that, I don't mean my posture, I mean that the photos are easy to assess what's going on. So the skirting board is nice and flat and level. You can see my knees, you can see my shoulders, my hair is tied up, you can see my belly in the direction my belly button's pointing in. There's a little clue there. So yeah, just to let you know that some of the other pictures I'm looking at, I couldn't use some of them that were sent through, just they were too wonky, but some of them are a little bit less clear than my photos, just because you'd like to think I was quite good at taking posture pictures at this point. So when I'm looking at the body in front of me, I don't really have like a set thing that I start with. So I don't start at the feet, I don't start at the head or the neck or anything like that. I just look at the person, and with the experience that I have, I'm thinking, what might be going on in this person's body? So what stands out to me the most, and obviously it's a little bit hard to do myself kind of you know, without knowing that it's myself, but for me, if this was one of my clients, probably the first thing I think that would jump out to me is that I'm quite anterior. So by anterior, if you look at the sort of line of my shorts, you can see that they angle downwards. It's not always the case that that will follow with an anterior pelvic tilt, but when the pelvis tilts forward anteriorly, so it's kind of in this direction. Actually, I'll get my annotation thing up and draw. So if we're imagining where my pelvis is kind of in that sort of forward slope, and my spine therefore rounds quite a lot in the bottom and then sort of rounds quite a lot in the top, and my head pokes forward. This isn't really anything to do with what's happening in my upper body, because I know that my thoracic spine is actually really quite mobile and it's quite strong, but it's overpowered by the tightness in my hips here at the front. So the anterior pelvic tilt is generally caused by, this is me doing a terrible drawing of the hip flexors, but the hip flexors are kind of located there at the bottom of the ribs, and they come forward down into the groin. So but then when those guys get a bit too dominant and too strong, they'll pull the pelvis forward into this anterior tilt, which then can create this, what we call kyphosis, rounding of the upper spine. So for me, the first thing that probably jumps out to me the most is the fact that, okay, this girl's got quite a big sway in her back and sort of rounding in the upper back. However, from a sort of postural perspective, really what you're looking at first, or looking for first, is if the person has rotation through their body. And I am definitely rotated, although it's not as obvious as it can be. So I see some people where they're very obviously rotated, and mine is a little bit more hidden than that. And the way in which my body rotates is, I mentioned it earlier, my belly button. So if you look at my belly button, you can see that the belly button kind of faces off in this direction here. And that is not because of what the belly button's just sort of twisted on its own accord. It's because my rib cage twists forward that way. So I have what we call left forward thoracic rotation. The left side of my rib cage is further forward than my right hand side. So imagining this is my right, this is my left. So I'll say that because you guys might not get so used to looking at the mirror image. So my left side of my rib cage rotates forwards, and that's why my belly button goes off in that direction. So I twist forward to the left hand side. It's not 100% obvious here through my posture, but hopefully some of the people I look at afterwards, it'll be more obvious. I don't particularly look rotated through my pelvis on the right hand side, but I'm more anterior on my right hand side than I am my left. So I know this through experiencing it and feeling it, but you can kind of see that I'm like more arched in my lower back on my right hand side than I am on the left. The left is a bit of a softer lordosis really, and that's because the hip is tighter on the right hand side, and that kind of pulls me forwards a little bit on that right hand side too. So it's called a pelvic disparity rather than rotation, but my right side of my pelvis drags me down and forwards a little bit more than the left, and the left upper body is sort of swiveling forwards to the left hand side. The other big thing that you can see is through my hands. So my hands are very telling. On my right hand, we see much more of the front of my hand. And on the left-hand side, you see more of the side of the hand. So my left arm is in a better position than my right arm. And the reason that we see the front of my arm here is because my right shoulder is more capped forward. So it's easy for me to say all this stuff, obviously, because I know my body, but I thought it would be handy to run through these things just with me first, and just to prove that I'm willing to put myself out there. So my right shoulder is more out of position than my left shoulder is, and they're both kind of rounded forward from the side, but the right one is worse, and that is shown up in that hand position as well. So for me, we've got anterior pelvic tilt, more so on that right hand side. We've got ribcage rotation forward on the left hand side. We've got hinged shoulders, so sort of capped forward shoulders on both sides, but it's worse on that right hand side because we see the hand. And the kind of final thing is that the stacking of my legs is actually fairly good. So lots of people that I see, their knees are much more narrow than their hips, their ankles are much wider than the knees, or kind of vice versa. But generally speaking, it's more that we have this sort of knock-knee effect. My legs stack quite well. So the toes are here, the ankles are here, the knees are here, the hip is here. But on my left side, I have what we call tibial torsion. So I might have it a little bit on the right hand side, but the left hand side, it's a bit more, it's just more prevalent. So if you look through my left foot, my toes want to hang out to the side a little bit wider than the ankle joints. And then if you look at the ankle, you can see that I kind of want to pronate. I want to like fall in a little bit more on the inside of that left heel and foot. And that is really a clue as to what is happening upstream. So here, my left kneecap looks like it's facing ahead, straight ahead. Oh, whoa, that's not straight ahead at all. It looks like it's facing straight ahead. But actually, because of what the ankle and the foot are doing, we have this like twist through my lower leg. And this is me trying to display a twist to you. So we call this tibial torsion. The tibia is twisting through the lower leg down to the foot. So actually, if I was to kind of reposition up my foot here on that left hand side, if I did that, my knee would end up twisting a little bit more internal. So there is this sign potentially that my femur, which is what the kneecap is kind of stuck to, is more internal on that left hand side. And I personally think that in my body, my dysfunction, I think, is that my left hip, or if I had to choose one dysfunction, I think that my left hip can't externally rotate very well. So my left hip up here can't twist properly in the hip socket. And what's happened is the right hand side is kind of like overworked and tightened itself up. I think that my upper body is then kind of spiraled and rotated up the chain as a reaction of that. And I think the lower leg is trying to help the hip out by torsioning itself in that way. So there we go. So I just wanted to, like, as I said, sort of put myself up there so you guys could see that I'm not by no means perfect at all, but I have not got perfect posture, but I don't have any pain. So I do my absolute hardest with the time that I have to keep moving, keep my body functional, and just keep working on my strength. So I've still got a long way to go, but at the moment, I am pain-free. So you can still have these bits and pieces of stuff going wrong in your posture. But as long as the rest of your body operates quite well, you probably won't really have any pain or problems necessarily caused by it. Like I could be more efficient. I could be, certainly I could be stronger in my lats and in my triceps and sort of in my upper body here for sure. And also in my glutes. But at the moment, I'm not suffering any pain at all. I do feel a bit tight in my right hip sometimes, and I do have some tension sort of in the right side of my torso here, probably because I've got a little bit of a hip hike on that right hand side due to that sort of tightness there, but no pain. So that's me done. I'm gonna get rid of myself, and if I can, and have a swig of my tea while this happens as well. Well, what's going on? Oh, I need to, sorry, you'd think I'd know how to work Zoom with the amount that I'm using it in my life. Okay, cool. So we've got next person, number one. So I've put these pictures on the software. I've put the red blobs over the faces to cover the people up, but I haven't looked at or particularly thought about what I'm seeing in these people's postures at all. So I haven't studied them beforehand. So I'm having a look first off, just as I said before, there's no like exact science to this. I'm just sort of looking at the person and thinking, what do I think looks the most off in this person's posture? And I would say probably for this lady, it's whatever is happening through her, oh my, I am so bad at Zoom. I do this all the time. So I'm looking through this lady's kind of left hand upper body here, and I'll highlight that from both sides so you can just see. So I'm just going to highlight that. That's the area of the body that I'm talking about at the moment. It's just the first thing that jumped out to me. It doesn't necessarily mean it is the most important thing, but that's what jumps out to me. So this lady looks like she has got a left side sort of hip hike. She looks a bit higher through her pelvis on that left hand side. I'm just going to clear the drawing so I can keep drawing over them. So there's something skew-iff about this side of her left hip, and she also is thoracically rotated through her left rib cage, just like I am. So if we look at the space behind her elbow and her back, you can see that there is more space here than there is here. And if you actually just look at her body, just using your eyes on that left hand side, you can see she twists forwards to that left hand side, and her left shoulder just looks a little bit more kind of tighter, just looks a little bit stronger, well, not necessarily stronger, but sort of just like it's a bit more rigid. It's sort of stuck in place a bit more. And actually, if you flick your eyes between the left and the right hand side, yeah, that left shoulder, the right shoulder looks more sort of sleepy almost, but that left shoulder to me just looks like it's up a little bit more around her ear, sort of. And yeah, so she has got this left thoracic rotation on that left hand side. Shoulder looks a bit tense and sort of tight forward on that left hand side too, and it looks like it's accompanied with a left hip hike. So her left hip looks higher than that right hand side does. If I look down at her legs, her left leg looks pretty good to me. So her toes are pointing straight ahead. The ankle, if we were to sort of draw a line through, excuse my straight lines, if we were to draw a line from her hip through her knee, through her ankle, through her foot, that's not bad going really at all. That's a pretty good alignment of the leg. However, on her right hand side, there's a different story going on. So she's got this internal kneecap that faces in this direction on that right hand side. So like me, she's got this twist inwards through her femur on the right hand side, and she has also got exactly the same as me, this torsion through the toes, the ankle, and the tibia and fibula. So yeah, she's got tibial torsion on that right leg. She's more pronated, sort of more collapsed through that right ankle, internal knee on that right hand side. So she probably can't externally rotate that right hip very well, which may well be almost exactly the same as me, where this hike has come from through her left hip, and possibly where that sort of tension and tightness is on that left hand side through the torso and through the shoulders. From the side view, she is a posterior pelvic tilt, so she's the opposite of me. Her pelvis slips down backwards, and because of that and the lack of strength in her hip flexors, if you remember me, I had those tight hip flexors that kind of jacked me forward anteriorly. This lady is the opposite, so her pelvis is slipping backwards posteriorly, which means that her femur and her hip is in extension now. So her hip flexors don't work very well, and therefore her knees hyperextend backwards because her hip flexors don't work. And then she's got this kind of, you know, it's this, I've exaggerated that with the line that I've drawn, but she's got this hyperextension through her knee that I suspect is caused by her hip flexors not working very well. So it's that whole sort of, you know, it's not just the knee that's reacting, the pelvis is reacting, the hips are reacting or creating, and this lady will likely struggle to, she'll be tight down the back of her legs just because of the position of her foot, sort of relative to her hips as well. She's also flexed forward like me through her upper back, and obviously I don't know how well this lady moves. I haven't met or seen her before, but I would suspect that she is more likely to have this rounding of her upper back as a reaction to her pelvic position than necessarily that this part of her body is like super weak. But I don't know. I haven't assessed her. So yeah, she was coming to see me as a client. First off, we'd be looking at getting rid of that rotation. So getting rid of the right side tibial torsion, seeing how well that right femur wants to externally rotate, because that could be her dysfunction. Get the pelvis down level, get rid of the rotation through the upper body on that left-hand side. And then I'd finish her sort of during the session, really working her hip flexors hard, and also doing some work with kind of reconnecting her big toe to her hips as well. So that's dummy number one. Not dummy, guinea pig. Dummy's not fair. I'm sure that lady is not a dummy at all. Okay, we'll come on to the next one. So there's no particular order here at all. Okay. So, okay, this lady, when I put her pictures on the software yesterday, I have to say, I think she has almost as good side-on posture as I see. So yeah, compliments to this random lady who I don't know. Her pictures are a little bit wonky. So if I look at the floor, I can see that the skirting board is a bit not level. So we have to kind of bear that in mind when we're looking at the pictures. But yeah, there are definitely things that I can see. So if we first off look at her side to side pictures, this lady has got really good stacking, much better than me. So the center of her ankles and the center of the line, I forgot to turn on the annotation again. Center of the ankle is in that through the line like this. We've got almost the center of her knee is through the next bit. Kind of center of her pelvis is almost through the next bit, center of her shoulders, and then her ears are a tiny bit forwards, but it's really not too bad at all. So her left view standing posture is really good. Like she's got a pelvis, it's like the Goldilocks of me and the other lady. So my pelvis is anterior, it kind of cranks forward. So I've got a big arch in my lower back. The next lady, her pelvis kind of slipped backwards. And then this lady has got a kind of almost like what I would say just off the top from just looking at it like this, a really good pelvic tilt. So she looks kind of engaged, but neutral. She's got an arch in her lower back, which we want, but it's not as much of an arch in her lower back as I have. So she's sort of got this nice straight spine and she just looks strong. And she also, you can see with her rib cage like stands proud. So I see lots of people where their shoulders, because they droop forward, they're kind of compressing on their rib cage. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to show you this lady in comparison to me, so I can try and show you two things, and then if there's somebody else that comes forward in the future that I have a look at that I can compare their rib cage to, that might be good. So if you look at this lady's kind of bra in comparison to my bra, because I am more anterior than her, so my pelvis is like this and my spine goes like this, my rib cage tilts up. So my bra there kind of demonstrates that quite nicely. So that, imagine that's my rib cage tilting upwards. This lady, unfortunately, she's not quite so good on the right hand side, but I'll talk about that afterwards, but she's still pretty good. So she's got, her spine is more straight than mine is, and her rib cage is also more straight. So she doesn't flare her rib cage upwards in the same way that I do. So I'll just get rid of those drawings there so you can kind of see that, but hopefully you can see how my rib cage tilts upwards, whereas that lady's is more neutral. And in fact, I'm just going to check that other lady just in case she had a kind of downwards rib cage. And she sort of does actually. Okay, that's a nice comparison. So again, to compare with this girl KF I've got, so if you look at these two ladies' rib cages, can you see how the one on the left, her rib cage is like standing a bit more proud, it's a bit more open across her chest, whereas this lady's rib cage is a bit more compressed. She might have, I don't know her, but she may well have more difficulty sort of breathing deeply. I don't know, maybe she's got asthma or something like that, but there's this compression at the rib cage, which can also massively contribute to respiratory problems and breathing problems and stuff like that. So I just wanted to highlight this lady KF who I was looking at and studying. She has very good side-on posture. You don't often see people that look quite so strong in their standing posture from the side. However, saying that, I said something about her right-hand side. Her right-hand side looks like it's really veering off the vertical plumb line. So she's got this kind of nice stacking of her joints, but she's got rotation through the right side of her pelvis. And that's why she's at this, oh, I am so bad at the annotations. So that is why she's got this kind of forward diagonal off from that foot area. So yeah, could just be the way the picture's taken, but I don't think it is, because if we take our eyes to the side and we have a look at her pelvis from behind, she is pretty wonky through that pelvis. So to me, and the way you can look at this is you can look at the lines through the waist, you can look at like what the shorts are showing you, and you can kind of just have you can just sort of see it. You can see when someone's twisted, but she looks like she is hiked up on that right hand side. She's elevated on the right hand side of her pelvis. She's twisting forwards through that right hand side of her pelvis as well, and hence why her body is coming off the line. She also looks a little bit like that right shoulder is stuck too. So when I see an elevated pelvis like that, oh, let's undo that. So if I see an elevated pelvis like this, I'm often taking my eye up, so imagining the spine that's underneath, which has to kind of bend to the side a little bit, and then the shoulder on that side tends to be quite stuck. So yeah, I'm kind of looking, again, if we look at her hands from left to right, you can see that the right hand is in a different position to the left, and the left hand looks like it's in a sort of more happy position, and then that shoulder is more elevated as well. So the shoulder is a little bit higher on that right hand side, and I suspect that it's to do with the hiking through her pelvis on that right hand side. If I look through her legs, by through I mean down, obviously she's not see-through, she has got, I would say, a little bit of a femur disparity that may well be caused by what is going on through her pelvis. But yeah, she's got, okay, so she's got an externally rotated kneecap on this side. So her femur on that side is probably stuck a bit external in the hip socket. The foot faces straight ahead. So she has also got tibial torsion like me, but her tibial torsion is the other way. So her kneecap is external, whereas mine was internal, and the foot faces in a different direction. So you've got that twist through the lower leg. So she's got external knee on this side, forward facing foot, which means a twist, and on this right hand side the knee faces externally, but so does the foot. So she doesn't have the twist in the same way, but there's something going on there. So whether or not the foot is stiff and doesn't work very well and doesn't connect to the hip, or whether or not her hip is also stuck on that side because of that pelvis. So if the pelvis is rotated forward on the right hand side, it might be that her hip can't move very well on the right hand side as well as the left. But this is all guesswork. You know, this is where my mind is going when I'm assessing people. When I'm looking at these photos, and then I want to try and find out the truth through getting the person moving. She's also got something kind of different going on through her feet. So if you look at her foot placement, this foot wants to go out to that side, and it's almost like she's kind of slightly pigeon-toed on this side. But I reckon that's something to do with, it's the wonkiness at her pelvis, and probably how her hips move slightly differently due to that wonkiness that's causing through the leg. And if I was to do a guess the symptom for this lady, you know, the symptoms don't mean anything. She could literally have anything going on, but I reckon she's probably tight, maybe some pain in that sort of lower back on that right hand side. She's probably get some pain in that right shoulder, and maybe right knee as well. But yeah, I'm just guessing. I've got absolutely no idea. If you are this lady, you can tell me whether or not I'm right. But I do quite like playing guess the symptom, because you can kind of see. But also, just to say that just because it's her right hand side that's kind of jacked up and moved forward like that, I would probably be thinking that it's her left hand side, being the weaker one, that has been the thing that's caused her problem. So the right hand side might be the one that kind of is presenting visually as most off, but I would be looking really at thinking, is it that her left hip has fallen asleep, or her foot, that's caused the rest of this stuff to happen? But guesswork. I don't know this lady. Okay, on to the next. So here we have lady number 3, who's not me anyway. Oh, I'm going to clear my drawings. I managed to leave them on the screen. Very clever. And so this lady, she's got slightly blurry pictures, but you can still see fairly clearly as to what's going on. This lady is very thoracically dominant. So she has got, I would say, probably quite significant, oh, why can't I get my annotation up? So I say she's probably got quite significant thoracic flexion. So this lady is pretty rounded through that upper body, and the head veers forward in that sort of forward head position. So this is pretty strong, and I'd want to look at what's going on there. And I would be thinking that she's probably got she'd be very stiff through the upper back, but it might not be. So this lady's got thoracic flexion. That's the thing that jumps out to me the most. And if I take my eyes down, we're back in the land of the posterior pelvic tilt again. So the pelvis slips backwards because the hip flexors don't work. And probably this upper back is a reaction because of this lady's pelvis. So because her pelvis isn't engaged, the whole spine is sort of going wrong at the bottom, and it's just this top bit that's sort of taking the burden and probably overworking because the pelvis isn't engaged enough. So just like the other lady that I looked at before, this lady has got the posterior pelvic tilt, so her hip flexors don't work very well. She's got the knees in extension. Again, it's caused by the hip flexors not working very well. And then her pictures aren't quite at as good an angle as that first lady, but she's going to have that same thing where she probably doesn't bend, she doesn't flex her ankles very well, just because of how the position that her leg is like stuck in from the pelvis. So from the side, she is a little bit wonky from front to back, and I'll talk about that afterwards. But the kind of the overshadowing thing here for me is how thoracically dominant she is, and the pelvis is switched off. But I would probably be looking at trying to get her pelvis more engaged and then see how her upper back changed as a reaction to that, and her knees would not be as extended as they are. So she's from the back, we can also see that she's got something going on the left side of her pelvis here, possible rotation, I would say. I often look at the feet to help me decide if the person's rotated. So if someone's rotated through their pelvis, they'll often have one foot that's in front of the other. Her pictures aren't that clear, but it kind of does look like her left foot is slightly in front of the right foot, which would point in the direction of she's got this left rotation going on through her pelvis. But there's something going on there for sure. Her arms look kind of similar really from the front. So unlike me, she doesn't really look like she's got like a difference from side to side through her shoulders, but both of her shoulders are sort of hunched forward like mine are as well. Through her legs, she has also got, something really going on with that left foot. I think her left foot looks quite sleepy. It needs to do some work. But her left foot looks like it's kind of off out to the side. It looks like it's falling in a bit. Her left kneecap, again, it's a bit blurry, so it's hard to tell, but the left kneecap looks like it's kind of facing off in that direction as well. So I'm kind of wondering if her left hip is maybe weaker than her right one is. So yeah, posterior pelvic tilt, suspect that that's a compensation for that. The thoracic spine is a compensation, and I suspect her left hip is weaker than her right hip. And I would say if we were going to guess the symptom, that this would be someone with a lot of sort of tightness in her upper back. She might get headaches, migraines, possibly tinnitus, vertigo, temporomandibular syndrome, or something like that. I just think she'll have a symptom up here at the top. So let me get rid of this one. I'm trying my hardest not to make this video ridiculously long, because I could literally talk all day long. Okay, we've got 3 more. Okay, so this lady here is, she's a nice example of pelvic rotation. So if you were going to, where's my annotation again? Why am I so bad at this? Oh, come on. I don't know what to do about Zoom. There we go. Just makes up its own mind, doesn't it? I don't want it now. Sorry, this is an interesting prelude for the people watching this video. Interlude, not prelude. So she is a nice example, if we are to take her pictures at face value, of what I meant by those sort of wonky feet. So if we look down here at her pictures from behind and her back view, you can see how that right foot is in front of the back and the left foot. And the reason that I believe that to be showing rotation is because she's doing it in every picture. So her right foot is in front of her left foot and in every picture, and she's awkward in the first picture that's being taken, so she's got her feet in a slightly different position because she's kind of like, I don't want to have my picture taken. It's very common that the front on pictures are normally the least representative, because the person tends to be posing a little bit because they're a bit nervous. So I think if she was standing more naturally through that front picture and her feet, you would notice that she's got one foot in front of the other. She's also got more of a bunion on that right hand side, which is another tell. And it probably, yeah, I'm suspecting that we've got the pelvis is rotated forwards on that right hand side, got the bunion, so she's kind of hitting the floor a little bit more with that foot, I would suspect, and that's why the bunion's is more so on that right hand side than the left. And she has got a good example of tibial torsion through both of her legs. So let's decide which one is a little bit more severe. It looks like her left side is a bit more severe, but the left toes are out to the side, the ankle is here, the knee faces straight ahead, and then in the middle of these things, you've got this like, I'm so bad at drawing, but yeah, so she's got that twist through the lower leg to knee to hip. She's got it on both of her legs, but I think that her left hand side looks a little bit worse. She looks like she's quite collapsed through that left ankle as well. So we need to get her feet waking up for sure. We need to get the feet talking to the hips better, so that her legs realign themselves better. I've kind of gone off on a tangent with the tibial torsion for this lady. So she's got right pelvic rotation, tibial torsion through both sides, and she looks a little bit like she's left thoracic forward, I feel. So if we look at the back of her body here on that left hand side at the top, you can see that her left hand is slightly further in front than the right hand is, and there's a little bit more skin here behind her left arm than there is her right arm. So yeah, so she's got a bit of a twist through that left upper body in the rib cage and the shoulder. Yeah, so that left shoulder is more out of place than the right one is. And she's got that pelvic rotation on the right hand side, which is probably the biggest thing that's going on. And she's also pretty flexed through her knees. So both of her knees are bent. So she's the opposite of the ladies that I said were hyperextending their knees due to the kind of the weakness through the hip flexors. This lady's got bent knees, and that may well be to do with what's not happening at her feet. So she can't straighten her legs out for some reason, and I'd need to figure out what that was, but her knees are stuck in flexion when they should be a little bit more straight than that. And shock, surprise, the right one is more bent. And if I was to guess the symptom, I think I might be saying right knee pain for this lady, and possibly left ankle, just because that does look quite collapsed. But honestly, you never know. This is why I'm sort of doing it for a bit of fun, because I like doing this with my clients, because I'm a weirdo. But the symptoms don't tell you anything helpful. You know, the symptoms are looking at a globalized issue on a local level. It doesn't matter which part of your body hurts. What matters is how your joints and your body interact with each other. But playing guess the symptom is quite fun. Okay, what else are we doing? Praying that this video is actually recording, you know, because it wouldn't surprise me if I'm just chatting to myself pointlessly for ages. Okay, so we've got this posture here. So these pictures, well, thank you for everyone for sending their pictures in. These pictures aren't great because this girl is wearing so much black that I can't see the direction of her kneecap. So there's a lot that I can't comment on in these pictures. But so yeah, I can't be quite so comprehensive as with some of the other people. But this is another person with a So yeah, if you want to have sort of posture pictures taken, I always say, you know, as much as possible, I want to see your knees, I want to see your belly button, I definitely want to see your feet, so I can't see this person's feet. I want to have it all in camera, so that we can have a look at what's going on. And she also looks like someone that may be standing in a kind of, I don't mean posing in a, she wants to look good, but she might feel a bit awkward, and she's kind of holding some tension through her legs. So some of my clients, I'll say, stand naturally, and they sort of pin their feet together like that. So I don't think this is 100% her feeling very comfortable. But so saying all that stuff, I can't really tell particularly what's going on with this girl's pelvis, just because of she's too covered up and it's too dark, so I can't see. But there are some things that we can see. So I'm really looking at that right hand. We see a lot of the front of the right hand, and we see a lot of the front of the left hand. So they're both of those shoulders are kind of curving forward and don't move too well, but the right shoulder is more stuck than the left shoulder. There's something going on with that right shoulder. From the side, she's another posterior person. So we've got weakness through the hip flexors, which means that this hip is in extension and the knee hyperextends. And see, all of these people have the same posture. You know, when people have got these hyperextensive knees, they always have the same stuff going on. They have the sort of weakness through the hip flexors here. The knees buckle back. The person is quad dominant. The hip flexor just doesn't work. So these people tend to look quite muscly in their quads because their quads like work too much on behalf of something else. So yeah, the knees buckle back in extension, and she will then struggle with dorsiflexion of her foot. So posterior pelvic tilt, hyperextensive knees and the foot position, but they'll all be connected. And then we come up here, and this is going to be someone who she will probably get neck pain, upper back pain, or at least like tension there. And again, I'm not convinced it's because she's like weak or stiff in this upper body, but if the lower body, if the pelvis kind of droops under, the upper back then ends up taking a big burden. So she's got this thoracic flexion as well. And if we look through her, oh, here we go. So here's the truth. So if we look behind her right arm and we look at the skin, sort of where her bra strap is, she's rotated forwards through that right hand side as well. So she's got the thoracic rotation through her right rib cage. And therefore, yeah, she's probably got something going on in that left pelvis. So she might be a little bit hiked through her left pelvis, but I'm not going to comment on her lower body just because I can't see it properly. But side on, we can certainly see that she's got some things going on. And you might be able to draw the parallels in terms of how when the pelvis tilts backwards like this, not always, by the way, it's never always or never. But when the pelvis tilts backwards, a lot of the time, that's when you'll see it combined with, again, a terrible drawing, but the hyperextension through the knees, so the buckling back knees. And yeah, I would say if we were going to guess a symptom for this lady, we would be thinking neck or upper back pain, possibly right shoulder pain, and she might get some knee pain because of her knees buckling back. But yeah, I can't comment on her legs particularly. Okay, final one on our journey. I hope it's been fascinating and interesting. So these pictures aren't great, sorry to this lady. So yeah, if you look at the floor is wonky, and this person who's taken the pictures has like stood at an angle that's a bit different each time. So her front picture's not bad, but the other ones, it's slightly guesswork. So again, I might hold fire on saying some things because I can't see everything properly. So from the front, she is a very good example of the tibial torsion again. So where's my annotation? I wish this would work. Why doesn't it work? Here we go. So we've got the toe that's wider than the ankle, and we've got the knee that looks like it faces straight ahead. But if this lady was to correct her foot, her knee would internally rotate, probably to the point where if she stood with her feet actually straight, her knees would hurt. So it would hurt her to try and stand like properly parallel with the big toes and the ankles touching. So she's got tibial torsion through both legs for sure. And I'm going to guess that she's going to be pretty weak through her feet. So I think that probably her feet just don't power forward very well. I could be completely wrong. As I said, this is guesswork, but just from my experience of looking at clients like this, I think we would find that her feet don't talk to her hips very well. So yeah, internal knees, even though they don't look internally rotated, they are internally rotated, because if she corrected her feet, they would twist inwards. Got something going on the right hand side of her pelvis or hip. So she looks like she's got sort of an elevation, yeah, probably elevation, or maybe it's a pelvic disparity up on that right hand side. And again, so her right shoulder goes with her as well. So because the pelvis is like this, the spine underneath is sort of, oh, so hard to draw. It's sort of like this a little bit. And then therefore the shoulder sort of gets pinched a bit differently. So if I look at her, if you just sort of see her right shoulder is a bit higher than the left, and then from behind, it just looks like it just looks like it's kind of pinched into place. She side on, let's look for rotation. Oh yeah, so her hand positions are actually in quite a different position from side to side. So if we look at where her fingers stop, there is something different definitely happening there. So I think that I'm not convinced. Yeah, I don't think she's necessarily rotated forwards through her thoracic spine, but I do think that she is like pinched through this area, which elevates that shoulder, which makes the hand go higher. And I think that the left shoulder looks like the one that's a bit more relaxed. Side arm, she is a posterior person, again, with the quad dominance and slightly hyperextensive knees. Hers aren't quite as strong as some of the other ones that we looked at earlier, but she'll be weak through her hip flexors as well. And again, we've got this rounding through the upper back, not massively, but I think she's not that posterior, but she's a bit posterior through her pelvis. And I suspect that that sort of upper body position is as a reaction to that. So yeah, I'm just having a final look, and that lady is she's more torsioned on that left leg. So that left leg is more twisted, the right hip hikes and the right shoulder is stuck, but I'm probably looking at her left hand side, I'm thinking deep down it's probably that left hip or that left foot that's fallen asleep, and I could be completely wrong, but that's just guesswork from seeing other people before, and sort of, I guess, having a spectrum of experience of what generally tends to present itself. So actually, what I'll just do quickly before I finish is I will categorize people vaguely into similar postures, and you will be able to see how they will, and of course not everybody's exactly the same, but you'll be able to see how there are these things that are parallel. So I might not just include everybody, I'm just going to bring the ones that come to mind. Yeah, she was probably the most obvious of those two that were left. Yeah, so these ladies here are all the ladies, and I'll try and get them sort of side by side so that you can at least see their side pelvises, side of their pelvises. So these ladies are all, come on, annotation, no, oh no, I'm bringing up the wrong I'm so bad at this. Sorry, bear with me. That's not what I want. Okay, I've got the annotation here. So these ladies are all the ladies, and there was another lady as well, but I'm not going to draw them all up. So they've all got the posterior pelvic tilt, which then, to differing degrees, gives them this hyperextension of the knee. So they have this kind of, they all look like that same quad dominance. They've all got that same sort of side on leg posture. And this isn't genetic. These ladies aren't born with this. It's just that that's how their muscles have developed, and it could have been that the muscles started developing like that since they were very, very young. So yeah, they've got similar types of postures. There's not really, in that group, there's not particularly anybody that I would say that is that comparable to me. So I feel like I'm kind of flattering myself if I say that my side on posture is like this girl's, because it's not. Hers is much better than mine. So I don't know if you can see that. So this girl's pelvic tilt, I've messed up on the annotations again, haven't I? Why is this so hard? I think someone needs to give me a lesson. Let's clear all the drawings. So this girl here has got a good pelvic tilt. She's got a little arch in her lower back, and her upper back is not as rounded as mine. Whereas with me, my back is the thing that has got the arch. So this girl's pelvis is good, and she's got a neat little arch in her lower back. Whereas for me, it's a much more of a kind of like sweeping curve of the whole back, which isn't what it's supposed to be. Like this girl's is a much better example. So I'm anterior, my pelvis is dragging me forwards, whereas she's just engaged through her pelvis with strong glutes, and her spine therefore can be taller than mine. So yeah, I don't want to compare myself to her because her side posture is much better than mine. And then other than that, the other couple were not all that similar to one another particularly. So I will stop sharing my screen. I hope that was interesting, and I hope that may have been what sort of people expected. So as I said, like, you see how quickly and how kind of erratically almost I'm making those judgments when I look at the body. So I'm just sort of like, oh, what jumps to mind? And like, I look at one thing and I see another. And then sort of by the end of that assessment, I'm starting to put together ideas in my head. And something that I didn't notice until the very end. Sometimes I'm like, oh, of course it's that thing. I didn't notice that to start with. So with that one girl, I didn't really notice to start with how high one of her hands was in comparison to the other. But actually that was quite a big difference from side to side. So yeah, please do let me know if you enjoyed this or not. Obviously it's a slightly different sort of direction for me. And if you like more things like this, then please do, you can either send me an email or you can write in the comments as to anything else like this that perhaps that you might like in the future. And I hope the people that have had their postures assessed enjoyed that. And, you know, there's absolutely no offense meant by any of it at all. It's just, this is what I do with my clients, and it's showing or just giving ideas as to which parts of the body might be weaker. And you can see that I certainly don't think that I've got perfect posture. It's all a work in progress. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful, and I hope everyone has a lovely day. Thank you for joining me. Bye.